Well, good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to this meeting of the Sacre. We are quite few, and this is quite a large space, and we'll get on with the business as briskly as we can. But I do want to say that I was at a meeting recently, and for the first time used one of these, and found it enormously helpful for this room. There are one or two down there, if you want to avail yourself of them. We're still gathering one or two people. Excellent. Come and join us. Maybe first record the apologies, Mandy.
I've received apologies from Councillor Snape, Linda Bartlett, Mohammed Parak, Sam Kerwin, Zoe Callan, Maddie Bell and Sam Phillips.
One of the things that we might do in relation to the Sacre development plan is to have a complete review of the pattern of our meetings as to whether an alternative timing might enable more people to take part. I just put that on the table for the moment. I don't quite know how quorate we are this afternoon and how many committees we've got here. We've got at least 3 of the committees here, I think, possibly 4. So,
Chair, we have got all 4 committees represented.
That is good as far as it goes. We deliberately set the quorums at a relatively low level. 1 member from each group was enough to constitute a quorum, I think. So there we are. One of our members, Julie, would like to say a little bit first before we begin the meeting proper. Would you like to use the mic?
This is it. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity just to speak briefly. For those that don't know me, I'm Julie Thompson, and I'm the representative on Staffordshire Sacre for the Baha'i Faith. And this year we've had a very joyous year despite the pandemic. And we've been celebrating the centenary of the passing of someone called Abdul Baha, who was the son of the founder of our faith, spent most of his life in prison, and then at the ripe old age of 70-something, was able then to travel. And we were blessed with him coming to the UK, to London, Bristol, Edinburgh, and also he spent some time in the States. And all he wanted to do was to spread the idea that we were all one family and that peace was possible for the whole world. And that was a cornerstone of our prosperity. To celebrate this event, there have been some little prayer books printed, and they're being given out as gifts. So I would like to, I'll just bring them round.
Bring them round, yes, by all means, Julie.
And they're little prayer books, and they just have prayers for you to use to add to your personal collection. And you'll see that they're for things we really need, like protection and for the departed.
I think we could say that this is fits very well into our Sacre development, finding out and responding to the different communities that we represent and relate to. So not only do we have free biscuits this afternoon, courtesy of Mary, but we also have this generous booklet from Julie and the Baha'i community. Afternoon, Councillor. Oh, good to see you. Hello. Anyway.
Hi, Vicky.
While Julie is going round, do we have an update on membership at all, Mandy?
There have been no changes to the membership since the last meeting. No
changes. Right, now may we then move to item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting held on 17th of November. These are at the front of the pack that we've been kindly given. I want you to take note that on pages 3 and 4, the report of the agreed syllabus conference will be agreed by the agreed syllabus conference and is not part of the receiving of the minutes for this meeting. We'll come to that in due course. So with that proviso, are there any corrections or comments on page 1? Sorry, yeah, page 1, the real page 1, both pages 1. Or page 2, half of page 3, half of page 4, page 5. If there are no objections or comments on the accuracy of the minutes, would you please indicate that they be accepted as a true record with your arms, hands? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, agreed. We don't want to dwell on matters arising, many of which appear in the later part of the meeting, but I do want to draw attention to one bit towards the end. The annual report on the bottom of page 4. I do this every year, but I have arranged that this report will be circulated to the members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Prosperous. I think that's the correct name, which is the body which now monitors the quality and provision of education and schools within the county. And that is the right body for them to receive the annual report from SACRE. And if they wish to, they'll be able to ask questions about it or comment about it. So I have arranged for that to be done.
And could I just add that it has been sent to Nassaka, and I've had a receipt.
Africa.
Nassaka.
Nassaka, oh yes, okay.
And I've had a receipt, and they then pass it on to the Department for Education because they are very interested from this year on in those reports. I've also passed it on to Staffordshire County Council and to Entrust to circulate as per their instructions.
There is a kind of long strategy involved here. The Department for Education, didn't want to touch the annual reports previously because they were all higgledy-piggledy. But now that there is a standardised format, it'll be much more easy for people to analyse them, to collate them, and to draw conclusions. And that's why I think the department is much more willing now to engage with this and to put some money and time into it. It'll be interesting to see what comes out. Anything else matters arising? Yes, Judy. Yes. Yes. West of Wolverhampton. No, I have been there. Fair enough. It is. Although having said that, the boundary is quite close in that little strip that goes down the west of Wolverhampton. All right, thank you. Anything else matters arising? Very good. Okay, we move on then to Nassaka, update on key issues, and we hand over to Mary, who's provided us with a report here, item 4, which Mary will be able to speak to. Hello, Gabby.
So on page 8, you have my update on key issues. The first update is to do with the project that SACRE provide quite a bit of funding for, and that's to do with the agreed syllabus, the project called Explore, Engage, Reflect, which is carried out in conjunction with the Minority Ethnic Achievement Service from Entrust and also with YouthNet. And you can see there's a list of schools here that have benefited from our project, our workshops, and I had the opportunity to visit 3 of those schools, as you can see there, and I have used that feedback to support the agreed syllabus review as well. So I went with a bit of a 2-pronged attack, if you like. We have some comments from the pupils, as you can see in italics, and the main thing for me was that members of staff were learning as much about Christianity as the children, and members of staff were learning as much about Islam as the children. So that's only, I would think that's very positive. And in a way, it's continuous professional development for them, but through a different format.
We're very pleased that this is going forward. It's a rolling programme, and as funds and time become available, so it will extend to more and more schools within the county. And it's proved enormously stimulating, hasn't it? It's had quite a good effect on pupils' general development and the excitement, if you like, that RE can develop within a school.
And where perhaps I've received emails to say we're uncertain about how to teach Christianity or uncertain about the Islamic part of the Greek syllabus, then I make sure that they're put on the waiting list, if you like, to receive these workshops. So that's been proving very fruitful, considering we've been in the middle of COVID as well. The next project was the continuous professional development. Well, I still haven't been able to take part in any face-to-face training, but I have done some work virtually, and I have actually done 2 school visits not too long ago. So I think it's starting to pick up a bit, and I am hoping that with regard to continuous professional development, that I'll be able to run a network meeting before the end of the summer term, because there seems to be a need for it currently, and I'm receiving emails saying, when's the network meeting, what is the date? So that's always a good sign when people are asking for it, yeah. Whereas as you know, telling people to go, better to be said, can we have some more meetings, Mary? So that's good.
Yeah, in a sense everyone's waking up, aren't they, post-COVID?
Yes. With regard to, on page 9, the mini Christianity conference with YouthNet, that's rolled out to high schools, but we haven't had much take-up from the high schools. We just got one tomorrow at King Eddie's with the Year 8 children, and I think the high schools have got a lot on their plates at the moment with regard to religious education, so we're being patient and just waiting for them, if you like, to decide this is time for us to have input. Those workshops that we provide are free, and we've had one school take it up, which is better than last term when nobody did. So let's say that's starting. Then I've had the opportunity to attend ARIAC meetings, and you can see what that means on the bottom of page 9, and NATRE meetings, and all of those have been online. And I've also attended just this weekend, it isn't written down here, but I have attended a 2-day religious education conference online provided by NATRE, and I'm looking forward to receiving those resources and using some of those to provide network opportunities in the summer term for teachers. With regard to the RE quality mark on page 10, which was what Judy was referring to, the school that we are helping and supporting to go for REQM, there's an update there, and they are on the case. They've applied, they're just waiting to be put into the schedule. It will be an online, a virtual assessment, but if they need any help or support, I know how to provide that evidence in that online scenario, if you like. And I've spoken to a few of the assessors, so I know what they're looking for. So that will be good to help them there. Then, if you remember, we provided grants for schools of about £200 last year, and we've got some feedback there, and all of that is written in the italics. And one of the schools has also provided that information regarding the grant in their village magazine, which I thought was good, to say that Sacre had been supporting them, they'd had this money and this is what they'd spent it on and this was the impact. And I've had some positive feedback from that, which it's a new way of exploring ways with Sacre, isn't it? So that's good. Yep. Then with regard to collective worship, I didn't send out the normal survey monkey, as it's called, with regard to collective worship, because I knew the result would be, due to COVID, we haven't been able to take part in this a great deal, and I think it would have caused a little distress amongst people and stress. So I undertook some in-depth conversations with a cross-section of schools, and you can see the report is there for you on page 11 and page 12. And basically everybody was so glad when they could get back together as a school, as a big family, to have worship or collective worship or assembly, and they didn't know they'd missed it until they didn't have it. And some of the positives there were as well that when they did take part in collective worship or assembly with parents joining in when children couldn't go to school, parents enjoyed that part of the school day and looked forward to it. And head teachers reported that actually the planning was better because they knew now they had an audience, just not the pupils, but they'd got adult audience as well, and they were very careful about their delivery. So a number of schools said that that part has really improved during the pandemic. That's mostly in primary, infant and first and middle schools, not so in the secondary sector. But that's, you know, it's some development, better than nothing. Better than me saying during the COVID pandemic there were no opportunities for worship or there were no opportunities for assemblies. So there are some lights there. That's good.
Thank you very much, Mary. We'll go through the report in detail in a moment, if we may. I just want to draw attention to what's at the back at the end of the report, which is that Mary has... thank you. Before we work through some of that report, which we're very pleased to receive from Mary, I just want to draw attention to the paragraph at the very end, which is that Mary has been contracted for a further year, and we're extremely glad that this is happening, but it is on a year-by-year basis, isn't it, Mary? And I think it has to be, for as long as N-Trust and the County Council and Mary agree this is a good way forward. But we're very grateful to Mary for all the work that she is able to achieve in contact with the schools and in support of RE. Mary brings with her enormous experience of schools and of management of schools, but also a keen interest in RE and collective worship. And she also has a skill at getting into the levers of power and change, so that she is able to link that commitment to RE to being able to get things moving and to see that things happen in governor packs and advice and contact with schools and everything. So we're extremely grateful for that and appreciate it.
And can I say thank you as well for affirming the fact that you're happy for me to continue. I am not actually employed by Staffordshire County Council or N-Trust, so just in case you think I'm an employee of that, I'm not. I'm just commissioned to come to this meeting, do all the preparation, and tomorrow, if you like, I am no longer commissioned to do anything until we come up to the next meeting, if that makes sense. But I think it is important to keep the ball rolling over and everything ticking over. It's better.
And you've done that very well during COVID, keeping the rumour of RE alive.
The rumour.
To quote a phrase from somewhere else. Anybody wish to pick up anything on the West Hill Legacy project? The first item in Mary's report, page 8 basically, or CPD, page 9. Mini Christianity Conference, the YouthNet, item 3, page 9. The meetings Mary has been to as part of her network of professional associations. Oh, yes, thank you.
Well, all very positive. So, on all three things that you've said about the West Hill project, very positive comments and the continuous professional development. Just interesting, on the bottom of page 9, at the top of page 10, that Nick Gibb, as he's the Minister of State for School Standard, had to actually ask that question. He should have known what level of religious education is legally required to have been achieved by the time a student reaches 16 in both maintained and academic schools, so I just found that quite amusing, really. Yeah. But anyway, and also he could have, there's lots of links to find out if he didn't know, but he should have done, shouldn't he? Yeah, I just wanted to, right, I'll let you go on because I've got another question for later on.
Do you want to put a question at all?
Well, yes, it's on the grants, on the £200 grants. I just can't... Yeah. Yes, it was just on item 6, update on grants. How would schools apply for these grants of £200?
In my role, when I am approached by schools for support and help, I usually talk about resources. So it's usually by email. People email me and say, help, I need this, I need that. Where can I go to borrow these items? And usually I have to say there is no central borrowing place. There used to be many years ago because I used to run that centre. And so it is through, I suppose it is through email asking. I dare not advertise it too widely because with there being hundreds of schools in Staffordshire, we might be a bit overwhelmed and then we'd have to start criteria, and which is not a problem. But at the present moment, it's by people asking directly, which you might not think is fair, is it? Or
Well, I just want, you know, so can the academy schools apply for this grant or not?
yes, some academy schools have applied, yes. But it's generally maintained schools. One academy applied last time. And I did inquire from the County Council Finance Office whether it would be appropriate to send them a grant. And they said, yes, it would be. That would be fine.
Have we reached number 7 then at this point, or is anything further behind there that people would like to comment on? Okay, 7 then, collective worship. Anything further? Thank you very much to Mary again for this substantial body of work and contact with schools and engagement with supporting RE. That's really very good, and we're all very appreciative. Thank you, Mary. Item 5, an update on NASICA. This will be relatively brief. This is the National Association of SACRAs, and the online monthly seminars have been continuing on a variety of topics. One of the ones that's coming up shortly, I think, is on worldviews. But it's a question of opting into these and registering, and it's whether people from the SACRA here want to register or not. The cost of each of these seminars is relatively low. I think it's £30 for a person, £40 for 2, or something like that. And if you pay a round figure of something like £50 or £60, I think, you have access to a whole suite of these conferences. If members of SACRA were interested in this, it might be worth making sure this was publicised properly. You can see this on the NASICA website, which is widely, freely available on the internet. That's just one thing, the ongoing online SACRA development work. The other thing, just to say, is that NASICA will be holding its first annual meeting face-to-face in May, later in May, in Birmingham, and that's, I'll give you the date.
23rd, is it?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still in April.
23rd?
23rd, Monday the 23rd. And although the plans for this are still emerging, it is expected that people will be able to attend in person or online. I think that's called a blended meeting, isn't it? Pick up the jargon. Or a hybrid meeting. I like hybridity I think we've got Richard Coué speaking to us, who is the lead, RE lead in Ofsted. We're looking for this to be carrying on the tradition, if you like, of really highly stimulating and successful annual meetings for NASICA. May. I'm sorry, May. Yes. Staffordshire is a paid-up, Staffordshire Sacre is a paid-up member of NASICA. I'm pleased to say it hasn't always paid promptly. That's probably lack of communication somewhere. But we do hopefully benefit from being a member of the national organisation. It's an interesting time, as you may have picked up from some of the earlier conversation. It does appear as if the government, or at least the Department for Education, is taking more of an interest in RE than it has done for some years. And it's including RE in its inspection programme much more than it was doing. And we find that quite interesting. And also there is support for SACRAs, much more awareness of SACRAs and engagement with SACRAs. So we look forward to that developing. If people have any questions to me on NASICA, please say. Well, I am now going to suspend the meeting of the SACRA in order to convene the meeting of the Agreed Syllabus Conference. If you would like to turn to page 15, we have a separate agenda for this item. Those present and the apologies are the same as for the meeting of the SACRA, but the minutes of the meeting on November the 17th were included as minute 104 previously in the minutes of the previous SACRA meeting. This is pages 3 and 4. So may we first agree that these are a true record of that meeting, unless people wish to make any corrections? Okay. I don't know whether there are any matters arising. I think we probably want to move straight on to the update, but we'll be fairly relaxed about going back to the minutes if people feel that would be appropriate. Okay. What I do want to say before we go into the update is this. We're working to quite a tight time scale now, and it does look as if the Agreed Syllabus Conference may need a separate extra meeting before the final one, when the Agreed Syllabus is brought for adoption formally. So I just want to flag that up at this stage. But if you can see the update on milestones, the process was initiated on July the 1st, and the Agreed Syllabus Conference met on November the 17th, minutes we've just seen, and we've got this meeting of February the 2nd today. We're going to be continuing with the mini working group to support wording, and then we'll need to be further meetings, virtual meetings or other meetings, and discussions with stakeholders through to early spring 2022 ongoing. And we're still receiving the feedback from the survey sent out to schools. And we'll talk about the survey in a moment, but as you can see, we're still gathering evidence and weighing up the feedback that we're getting about the agreed syllabus from teachers, from stakeholders. So it's going to mean that the working group will be working fairly, furiously isn't quite the right word, but with a certain amount of focus if it's to get through to the point over the next 3 or 4 months when we can bring the document forward. Mary, do you want to take us through a little bit more now, future actions?
Well, as Michael has just said, we've got all of the information given to you there on page 15. And I think if you turn over to page 16, it's a little bit clearer of where we are. I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already taken part in the survey, to do so. I had a bit of a worry about an hour before the meeting when I had an email from the business unit at Interest to say that they were taking all Survey Monkeys off and they were going to now move to Microsoft Forms. And please could I just inform anybody who needed a link to the previous survey.
Dear.
But it's okay, because in my answer, I actually said, don't do it at any cost. And we tied in the head of services at Interest, and he said this is a part and parcel of the Staffordshire County Council agreement with Interest that this survey would continue until April, and at any cost it has to remain. After that date we can move to Microsoft Forms, so they have been told not to remove it. Otherwise, the thought of trying to inform 500 schools of a new link and having done 3 webinars on it, it would have seemed a little bit of waste of time.
If people wish to take part in the survey, the link is there at the top of page 16.
It is.
And I would encourage people to do this because you're stakeholders, as well as the schools and the county council.
So, looking at feedback, all of that is on page 16, going over onto page 17. This feedback includes feedback within the survey and from face-to-face, as in meetings, because I have done a few of those, and the virtual meetings that we've also run as well with the working party. I think those in the working party hopefully can say that it's been interesting to hear the viewpoint of teachers in particular, and good for SACRE members, such as Judy over there. Good to hear, isn't it, what teachers actually feel about the current agreed syllabus and the ways they can see going forward.
I should say that these are just raw comments. They're not been digested or processed at all. They've just been recorded here, the reactions on the survey. I'm concerned at the one at the bottom, which is way out of sympathy with almost all the others, I think. Is there a context here, Mary?
All I know is that it was a maintained school, because they don't actually say where their school is. It was a maintained primary school. And that worried me. It did worry me as well, Michael. And that tells me that there is a training implication for schools. Because all of the comments we're actually getting, it's what they want is not a syllabus, but a scheme of work, where I explain to them what happens in every lesson, at every stage, for every year group and every assessment process associated with every lesson. And please could I plan all the lessons? And that's from, reception up to Key Stage 3 and 4. And I think that some people have got the wrong idea of what the agreed syllabus does. If we go to the national curriculum, because this is the comparison we have, the national curriculum gives a skeleton of what needs to be taught at different key stages, and teachers have to interpret that themselves. This is similar in that respect.
Gabby, in a moment, if I may comment on this, I think this is teachers feeling a bit overwhelmed, a bit lacking in confidence with the material. They want to, if I can put it like this, a little bit of spoon feeding. They want to be told what to teach and how to teach it, which is not what we're into as a SACRE.
No. And the emails I receive are, for instance, things like, I've got to teach a Year 5 lesson next week. I'm being looked at by as performance management, and they want to see RE, and I've got to do the sacred text bit for Year 5. Please, could you send me a plan of work and all the resources, because I'm panicking. And it's that kind, you are right, it's that kind of anxiety that teachers are experiencing.
Gabby? Could you... Mike, put the mic on. No, there's a button.
Thank you. Did students have any input into the new syllabus? Were they asked
Yes, I've been speaking to students, and some of their comments are on page 8 when I've been into school. So yes, I've spoken to students as well, and they know that they like learning about different faiths. They are able to say, I didn't know Christians did this, I didn't know the Baha'i faith represented that. And it just shows the level of knowledge that they wish to gain. Students are really enthusiastic, which is great, good news.
Yes.
If I could just speak as a teacher for a minute. I am a science teacher who's teaching RE, and I'm working very hard at it. And I think as it goes with most teachers are teaching out of their specialism with RE. So I think there is that genuine sort of anxiety. But I know in our school we try our hardest to make sure they're interesting for children, but there is that anxiety. And I do work a lot harder to plan one RE lesson than I do a week's worth of science, because I think it's quite hard, because you don't want to miss the spot. So I think that is probably where teachers are coming from. Does that make sense?
I have to say that Mary is incredibly ready and willing to give a one-to-one support if people do contact her.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, Julie.
I had was fortunate to go into a school 2 years ago, and this was out in Brood. There's I think it's a middle, might have been a primary middle school. And again, the poor teacher there was a science teacher who was actually trying to teach religion. And she expressed herself didn't have a particular faith. And she expressed that...
Can't quite hear.
Oh, sorry. She expressed to us that she didn't have a particular faith. So she found teaching religion, even though it was sort of more Christian, obviously she had support, it was a Christian school, but she felt that she was unable to answer all the pupils' questions. We went in as a kind of, just as an alternative religion, if you like, or alternative review of God and religion. And it was very interesting. The children, actually, their religious knowledge was quite poor. They didn't even bring up the fact that they thought Jesus Christ, despite the fact they were a Christian school, was actually. So in this particular instance, I think there is a problem with the way the schools are being operated these days, or there is a failure in the system somewhere. If we're going to get good spiritual education in, then we need to look at that needs to be addressed
if I
somewhere.
understand what you're saying, Julie, it's difficult for a person who comes from a non-faith background both to have the sort of range of knowledge and insight, and also to be able to convey something of the essence of a faith tradition or something like that. But equally, it's difficult for somebody who comes from a faith background to convey what it's like to live without faith in an authentic way.
Yeah, that sort of, she was trying to...
So teachers have to be enormously skilled in covering a range of diversity and of stances, and trying to be empathetic with all and fair to all without being any bias at all. And it is a challenge, isn't it?
It is, and I think the other thing, we were able to talk to the children, and as I said, their general knowledge wasn't very wide. I mean, I know this is a school out in the sticks, and so I think there is something there that there needs to be an addressing on how do we reach the teachers that need help, maybe. How do we promote, how is that promoted through the school system?
Mary.
So we're trying to address this through networking. We're trying to address this through leadership. One of the ways is through working with governors to make absolutely clear that this is a statutory requirement and it needs to be discussed. Even if people don't have the knowledge, we need to find out the level of knowledge. And then it becomes a leadership challenge, if you like, because if it's got to come from the top, hasn't it? It's got to be recognised within a school that this subject is important, resources are needed, although I know they're very, limited. And most schools now are identifying an RE subject lead because Ofsted want to speak to the RE subject leads. And most schools now are trying to provide training for the RE subject leads. And the way we do that in Staffordshire is through networking and through the NATRE, the National Association for Teachers of Religious Education networking. And then we have networking through the diocese. Vicky works in that way as well. And then I am trying to twin schools together, a school that has very little knowledge about religious education and one that has an extensive knowledge. So I'm trying to get them to network with each other as well. And Sean, who isn't here today, he's been helping, Sean Miles, and one of our members has been helping with that as well and facilitating some of that networking. But I agree with you. We're at a very difficult crossroads, if we like, and we're trying to address it. Through the agreed syllabus, what we can do is we can provide the skeleton, and then in the appendix give good examples. Now that won't be the syllabus, but it will provide examples of perhaps a good look at assessment, or what would a good lesson look like in one of the subjects, and so on. So in the appendix, we're hoping to address some of the planning issues, some of the content issues, but it will not be the agreed syllabus, if that makes any sense. So that's how we're going to try and expand it with your blessing.
Thank you.
If I may move on. Okay, section 7, reflection on the vision and aims, and this is a crucial discussion this afternoon. One of the comments that was made that I resonate with is that the vision behind the agreed syllabus should be clearer and emphasised and contextualised, perhaps. You'll see the current wording. The role of religious education in schools is to help prepare and equip all pupils for life and citizenship in today's diverse and plural Britain through fostering in each pupil an increasing level of religious literacy. I still feel that the basic conciseness of this is worth preserving, but I have an alternative form of words to suggest, because I do feel that a clear, concise statement at the beginning could then be expanded and reflected upon subsequently. But I'd like to try out with you something along the following lines. Through fostering in each pupil an increasing awareness of and sensitivity within the diversity of religions and worldviews. An increasing awareness of and sensitivity within, the diversity of religions and worldviews. Yes.
Right. I'm a bit confused because there is already one written on the page. The agreed syllabus 2022 vision for religious education is at the top
I'm finding it very difficult to...
Sorry. At the top of page 18, there is the agreed syllabus 2022 vision for religious education is.
Well, that's a suggestion.
Oh, right, okay.
And this is undigested. This is raw material, isn't it, Mary?
Yes, because on page 17, just above the word introduction,
yes,
it says
I understand
possible rewording to include.
Yes, thank you for raising that.
So it could be, as Michael has said, it could be some of the words that are written underneath there. It could be the words over on page 18. And this is what today's meeting is about, is you all having a think about those words. And is there anything there that you think has value to be put into the new agreed syllabus? So Michael has suggested some wording.
If you can look at the last bit of bold towards the bottom of page 17, this is the introduction to the next bit that follows. Possible rewording down below, taking into account suggestions from various stakeholders. So these are all suggestions from about 2/3 of the way down page 17, all the way over page 18 and on to even 19 and beyond. This is all material for the working group to engage with, and the Agreed Syllabus Conference has an opportunity now to give it a steer if it wishes to, or to take note of the work that's going on and to say it will wait until a text is actually produced for it to look at.
Right, so can I just come back? So the words that you've just said are not written on these pages?
They're not at the moment,
okay,
no.
Right, that's what I was trying...
They will be in the minutes, hopefully, Mandy.
With the help of the webcast, they will be in the minutes, yes.
Well, I can provide them. But looking through, I'm sure we want to preserve the democratic and open character of Sacre. But as chair, I have a view as well, and I shall feed that view in, and hopefully, as I did with the existing syllabus actually, and as Mary did. So really what we're asking for is your reaction to these different suggestions here. At the bottom of page 17, we have someone seeking to link RE and the agreed syllabus with the broader aims for education put out by the County Council. And we might very well be able to weave some of that material in. Then over the page, that's another suggestion for suggesting the vision, which corresponds in some ways to the bold that we've been looking at, in fact. It's aiming at the same broad area. It's a question really of finding something that summarises in a succinct and punchy way what RE is about. And I think the AS will, that's a follow-on from the paragraph above. And then Mary, I think, has added to the aims of exploring, engaging and reflecting to see how these might be spelt out a little bit. Shall I pause there? If anybody wants to pick up anything on page 18 or a bit over on page 17? Yeah, back, Gabby.
Yes, I like your suggestion of putting in sensitivity. I think that seems to be missing here in all these suggestions. Right. So it would be good to add that to whatever we come up with.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. As I've said to Mary, one of the things I do not want to do is to produce a very heavy tone. If we can produce a fairly lean syllabus, which hasn't got a lot of fat on it, if I can put it like that, and that people can actually get the structure of and get the main sort of framework from, I think that's more effective than putting a lot of detail and a lot of discussion. It's partly a matter of presentation, but it's partly a matter of not overloading the document too much.
Michael.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I fully take on board what you say in terms of your reservations in terms of laying it on thick, but I think what we have found during COVID, and I'm probably using examples from my own self now, is I think we've lost that capacity to mix with others. I think that's gone, and I think we're in that process of relearning it again in terms of engaging with others in the population. We've always, been a bit tentative with wearing masks. I include myself in that category. So I think it won't hurt to remind people what the focus is in terms of religious education in schools, and I don't think it's going to hurt too much the target audience that we're aiming this at. And I think it's important that people grasp what it's all about. I don't think we should, at this time, I think we should be taking the lead in terms of being a little bit more proactive, and it may come across as a little prescriptive, and I do get that, but on the other hand, I think we shouldn't lose sight as what we're all about, and I think that message we need to communicate in schools of what religious education is for, and also to perform that role of engaging with pupils and producing that rounded, well-balanced individual in the wholeness of their pathway through school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've discovered that I hadn't got the volume properly on. But I have now. Yes, Julie again.
I think the suggestion is an improvement on what we had before. And I suppose I have a question in that I hope somewhere we are going to promote the idea. I think in the last section, the AS will, I'm very pleased that we're going to promote the idea of moderation and respect. because extremism in anything is dangerous. An extreme value. And if we're going to work with people across the world and things are going to improve and we're all going to start working together, we have to have a more moderate line in our viewpoints. And I think moderation is a very useful spiritual tool, as well as consultation, of course.
And of course, this ties in with British values to some extent, which we will come on to in a moment. This is all very helpful. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, so first of all, my apologies for arriving late, parking problems. So I'm Ian Horswell for the minutes. The sensitivity inclusion in your suggestion ties in with that avoiding extremist views. I'd argue it's sensitivity and moderation go together. Did you deliberately miss out secular or non-religious from your paragraph?
Not at all. I said religious and world views.
Is it worth being specific about religious and non-religious for those students who may not recognise the distinction otherwise?
We will actually make sure that the language is clear, but you're quite right. There's no intention to airbrush it out.
I know that students tend not to see things, well, they don't even see things that are there, do they, a lot of the time? But no, thank you.
But one of the things that we have picked up is, I mean, there's a whole momentum about developing world views, secular world views, non-religious world views within the RE syllabus, which we will be taking note of and which we will be, yes.
Valuable contrast, thank you.
On page 18, in the italics, you can see third line down. It does talk about including religious and non-religious worldviews. And I would like to point out that under the dotty point 2, enable pupils to sensitively engage. So we have started to include those aspects as well. This is just from feedback, just the first thoughts that we have, and we appreciate all your comments today because it reinforces what we've heard and reinforces the way we try to construct some of these sentences to make sense, if you like, to everyone.
If I might comment, what we are trying to do here is to wrestle with the fact that people do not like diversity. They like to belong to their own particular group and identify with that group and to feel that they want to avoid, if you like, being contaminated by too much contact with other groups who are different. If I can put it in general terms, and I think there's a human psychology that we're wrestling with here. We're trying to, in a sense, do social engineering. We're trying to say we need our younger generations to be able to live in diversity when we found it very difficult to do ourselves. I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it?
I'd just add to that, there's a really nice example of food banks running in Liverpool with two opposing football teams, and obviously people will often define themselves very much by who they support, working together for their communities. And I think it's a nice contrast that for many students, I'm a teacher by trade or was, that takes it away from where they're thinking about their religious identity and gives them something else to think about. And so it's talking to people who look different but are not actually different is, I think, what we're all after here, isn't it?
That's a super example. Thank you very much.
I'll find a link.
And I think it is emphasised on page 19 under the teaching and learning section, where the second paragraph under there does talk about the thoughtfulness and generosity, sensitivity again, and engaging with those who hold perhaps different perspectives without prejudice and so on. And that encompasses some of what you're saying.
Yes, and the context here is that if you go too far down this line without qualification, you lose a sense of your own identity. This is part of the...
Yeah, I was just thinking that what you were talking about, Michael, and I was thinking about the concept of how do we build unity, diversity within unity. We're all unified because we are human beings. That is a core principle that maybe we're trying to promote, that we have respect for all human beings regardless of their background or whatever across the world. So this idea that promoting unity and diversity is an interesting one.
Good. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we've expressed it as in the agreed syllabus is learning how to live well in a diverse society. That's the phrase that we used in the syllabus, without trying to define what that might mean. It might mean different things to different people, but we are in a diverse society, and negotiating your way around it isn't easy, even for teachers, or perhaps particularly for teachers.
And when we talk to children, we talk about, imagine that you're wearing spectacles with different lenses, and my spectacles are different to yours, so how you will see will be a different way I perceive things. And my way is not the right way necessarily, your way is not the right way, but we have to learn to work together to come to some common agreement. So we talk about lenses with children, looking at the world in different ways, and who is right, and is anybody right? And this is part of the exploring. So if a teacher doesn't know things, that's fine, because in classrooms, especially at Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3, we can admit we know nothing about the Baha'i faith. Let's find out together. Let's set us all tasks to answer some key questions. And that's where teachers learn alongside their students. Yeah. So not knowing is okay, but not willing to find out is not.
The remaining material is material partly, I think, as a sort of memo to Mary herself in taking the working party through the extra bits of text and tweakings that need to be done. Do you want to say anything further about this, Mary? Or
I know we've got to enlarge the assessment section because people are stuck on what it means in RE to assess a pupil. In our current agreed syllabus, we have actually clarified what we would call average child, if you like, in early years, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and actually we name each year group, whereas most agreed syllabus just says at the end of Key Stage 1, by the time a child is 7, they should know this, by the end of Key Stage 2, by the time a child is 11. So actually, we are clearer than most about what we think is appropriate assessment criteria, but that needs enlarging a little bit as well. The agreed syllabus we currently have, as I said last time, was quite revolutionary when we wrote it 5 years ago, because most people were only working on 2 aspects. That's learning about religion and learning from religion. Well, ours asked about, yes, learning about, that's exploring, but we also learned about reflecting and engaging. And that is the way most of the new syllabus that have recently been written have been working on 3 lenses, if you like, of teaching and learning. So we do have good foundations, I believe, with regard to the current agreed syllabus. But as you've said, Julie, it needs enhancing. It needs to be better. It needs to be the best possible it can be. But in 5 years' time, again, it won't be, because things change. But we've got to be current for today. So the section on assessment will need enlarging, because people have asked, what about more able pupils? We don't seem to have recognised them. And the same with British values, that's over the page as well. As you've pointed out, do we need to be clearer about those British values in our agreed syllabus? It might be part and parcel of a appendix, or it might be part and parcel of the main body. And then going over onto page 23, I've started to try and firm up some of the aspects to do with early years, because the foundation stage aspects have changed, and they've changed by law, so we have to look at that. And then people have asked for more information on page 25 about SEND, special educational needs provision. It's not clear enough. We've got about 5 lines in the agreed syllabus currently, and people are saying that's not good enough under EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion. So we need to enlarge that section as well. And so it might be that that's an appendix section. It might be that we don't have to enlarge it too much within the agreed syllabus itself. And then people have asked, well, what about Ofsted? That's over on page 27, because Ofsted are talking about intent, implementation, impact, and do we need those words somewhere in our syllabus so that we reference what we have already and say this is the intent of the syllabus, and then we talk about what we have already and say this is how we would implement the syllabus, and then we talk about the impact, which is the assessment. So there may need to be additional vocabulary, if you like, added so that people understand where the syllabus sits within Ofsted terms. So
Yes,
that's it in
thank you, Mary.
summary.
So you can see that there is plenty of work still to do, and we'll be working furiously with the working party and Mary on her own over the next month or two to put it all together. As I say, we will need a further meeting of the Agreed Syllabus Conference, I think, for a further look at it and a tweak before we bring it forward to be formally adopted. And we may not be able to do it within the timescale, but we'll try to do it.
No, usually what we do is we produce the agreed syllabus, then we have a launch, and then we say it becomes statutory, and we may be saying it becomes statutory in January 2023, so that people have the opportunity to link the old syllabus into the new syllabus. But I would hope that they would see that there are not radical differences as to what they have to teach. The radical differences are in the thought process behind the teaching, if that makes any sense. It's not actually the content that might change, it's the way the teachers have to think about RE, and that has a big training implication.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. For the benefit of the councillors here, if I can just dot the I's on the sort of legalities here, when the Agreed Syllabus Conference has agreed the syllabus and the SACRE has noted this, the agreed syllabus will be submitted to the County Council for confirmation, for ratification. Normally this will be via the Cabinet member who represents this particular area. But it is a necessary formality because the agreed syllabus is the county's agreed syllabus, not the SACRE's. We do value very much the support that the councillors give here and the interest they take. Okay.
So on page 20 and 21 is the next steps, what we really need to be working on, and that's the body of the information that I've tried to give you then in the discussion papers from 23, 25 and 27 onwards. So I think perhaps it would be a good idea for people to go away, think about it and email when you feel you've got something you want to add or something you're uncertain about, and then that would contribute greatly. No news, I'll presume it's good news.
It's quite a technical job, this tweaking and this weaving in additional material. And I'm just asking Mary whether she's got the time and the energy to do much of the work here.
I'm going to do it because you've put faith in me. I will address it. This is a task I've been given to do, and I don't think I've ever failed in delivering a task. The quality might need some tweaking, I agree, but the bare bones will definitely be there for us to work on.
Yes.
And the local authority has acknowledged that it's a lot of work. So I did receive an email to say they're concerned about my workload with regard to this, and they are going to pay me as a commissioned member of my company to produce it, but you know, the payment is grateful, but you are all volunteers, so I have to remember that as well in that context.
Well, we're very grateful, Mary. Well done, yes. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a long document, a lot of hard work's gone into it, and I like the comments about the radical bits about the teacher's approach to it rather than the curriculum itself. And I noticed in a lot of the comments that have come in, one is about British values and upholding to those. And it is in the mindset. There will be some that instantly bristle and think, oh dear, we're going a little bit onto the racist and controversial thing. But if you read what the British values are, I don't think anybody can disagree with them. They are what we hold to in this country. And from a different perspective, you could almost say this is part of climate change as well, because I spend an awful lot of time, in fact I have this morning, discussing about changes to the climate, crops and various other things in my day job. And one of the things that's coming out of that is that as climates change around the world, you end up with economic migration, and there's an awful lot of people choose to come to this country, whether they come here legally or trying to get in other ways is for somebody else to debate. But the reason they come here is because of our British values, and it's very nice to see them set down in this paper quite clearly and what they're about. And I do hope that those who make comments on the agreed syllabus stick to the British values in this paper.
Yeah, thank you. If I can just comment, schools are required to promote these British values, and Ofsted will inspect as to whether there is any kind of delivery of these values in the schools. Is that right, Mary?
Absolutely, yes. And there's often a comment where they're not being promoted. And if you're in a faith school, they weave the British values in with their Christian values, same in Catholic schools or Methodist schools.
It would help if some people held to these values on social media.
Indeed, indeed, yes. Social media is a can of worms.
I'm going to have to challenge that one. I'm very polite on Twitter, but my behaviour is much better than most of those in the House of Commons. So.
I don't think we'll go down that one. Okay, is there anything else that people would like to talk about or raise in relation to the agreed syllabus work? In which case, I will declare this meeting of the agreed syllabus conference closed, and will reconvene the Sacre meeting for item 7, to provide members of Sacre on the workforce census from 2020. This is quite an interesting one.
Yes, this is a very interesting article that we have here in front of us. Usually we survey schools through SurveyMonkey, asking them how many hours do they spend on religious education, etc., etc. And that's what we do as Sacre. But because of COVID, we didn't think it was actually fair to produce such a survey, because we knew schools would feel once again anxious. So we have, through Sacre, a service level agreement, if you like, with NATRE, the National Association of Teachers of Religious Education. And this year, they have been looking at, instead of such a survey, they've been looking at something called the workforce census. And that's where each school, at a stated time and date within the year, have to inform the DFE of how many hours they use to teach certain subjects. And NATRE contacted me to say, would I be interested in looking at the Staffordshire results? This was part of one of the conferences I went to. I said yes, and the results are here for you to have a look at. It looks quite complex, isn't it? It's got lists of schools, and it's 2 pages long. And the notes that I've put for you on page 30 and 31 try and explain to you what that census stands for. And the issues to investigate, I've put on page 31. There, for some schools in this county, there are 0 hours allocations according to the RE in their school. This could be because they confused where they might. This is about secondary and middle schools. Primary schools teach RE. There's no worries about that. But it's the secondary, high school, middle schools. So where it says zeros allocation, it could mean that they're teaching philosophy and ethics, and it's really a religious education, and they're not actually identifying it as the label that we would recognise. There's also some schools showing no hours recorded for religious education or religious studies. But I've had a look at some of those websites, and in the website it states categorically that they teach so many hours of religious education per week. And some of them are Catholic schools, so actually I know they do it. And some are Church of England schools, so I know they do it. So it's also the interpretation of the information that we have here. What I need to do is look at those websites for all of those schools in greater detail to produce for you a better report, if you like, on each of those aspects. And actually to praise the schools that have increased the time allocation to the teaching of RE. There are 16 of them, but conversely there are 22 schools that have decreased. So it's what Natre have said, it's a balance. It's representative of schools throughout the country, what's happening in Staffordshire, but it's something for us now to keep an eye on, and we do have the names of specific schools, which before we didn't really have. So it'd be interesting to see what next year's census looks like, because we know there are implications of COVID within this. So it will be good to look at that next year as well and make some comparisons. Yeah. So I just thought that was great for us as SACRE to look at that, and if you like, make comments or just affirm the fact that you'd like me to do some further exploration.
I think we're very fortunate that this fact-finding material is available to us, because one of the problems that we have as a SACRE is to know what's going on in the schools, getting information, accurate information and an overview of the situation. So this is good for secondary and middle schools. And we'll be able to follow this up year by year. And I think Mary's offer to explore and make contact with schools where there seems to be concern is one that we should endorse. Yes.
Yeah, I think we have to look at this with caution, because there are Catholic schools on here that have got 0 hours, and I'm sure that that's not right. So I do think you have to be very sympathetic to the fact that November, 2020 was a very challenging year, wasn't it, for everybody, including schools. So I think we have to err on the side of caution.
Thank you, I'm sure.
Ofsted, when they go into a school, has this information. And for instance, with regard to religious education, if it's a statutory requirement to teach it, and the school is recording 0 hours, then Ofsted asks the question. So I think schools may wish us to ask the question before an inspector. But if I email schools, I would do so in the most sensitive manner and say, I'm just asking for clarification. Would you be able to just give me a little bit more information? And well done for getting through COVID. That type of email. I certainly wouldn't be wielding big sticks or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at this ours isn't accurate, so I don't know who filled it in. But definitely this is not accurate for our school.
No. So these are filled in by business managers at school.
Yeah.
And they possibly seek the information from leaders. So again, we've got another training implication, haven't we, for leaders?
I'm the leader that does the timetable, and I can tell you this isn't accurate. So, yeah, so I'm just definitely take it with a big pinch of salt.
Mary, would it be possible to take this up with Deborah Weston on the methodology involved here? Because, this comment does raise a question.
Yes, Deborah has written a commentary on page 30 about the rationale behind it all. And I think she's just transferred the information from the workforce census as they did under freedom of information request. All she's done is transfer one set of information into a grid for Staffordshire schools. But it's interesting for discussion, isn't it? It's a discussion starter for 10.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, it's just made me chuckle. I was on in my real life job as a farmer. I was in a meeting this morning for about 3 hours about pesticides and the different things that they use. And there's a thing called the Integrated Pesticide Management Plan, where you discuss why you do certain things. And we came to the conclusion that most people got in touch with their agronomists and people who write them the day before they have an inspection to get the little red tractor designation. So there could be a carrot and there could be a stick in getting these things in. But I do take the comments that they're not a true report and I think they've had a very difficult year as well.
That's right, absolutely.
And concentrate on doing other subjects, the core subjects, rather than RE would be a reasonable expectation.
I think it's a good foundation to start the conversation, and this time next year, won't it be lovely when we see an increase in all those RE hours, because all of us want to make sure it's recorded correctly, don't we?
Just like the Integrated Pesticide Management Plan, and you get 2 career development points if you submit one into the national thing. So if you could get some sort of carrot, they might submit them in a bit quicker.
I think schools that jump to the day before an Ofsted inspection won't do very well. Is that all right, everyone? Thank you, Mary, for bringing that. Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. It may well be, Mary, an opportunity to see some good practices that are happening in some schools that could be shared with others. There may be some joined up thinking between schools themselves to increase the hours that are perhaps put in place.
And Mary has access to all sorts of means of communication, don't you? That you can celebrate good news and that sort of thing. Yes. Thank you. Shall we move on? Item 8, the current budget. I think are in a healthy state. Mary, do you want to say anything?
It's all outlined on page 36. We know what monies we have committed, and in trust take the money out as they see fit. It would look like we've got £490 left. Now, when we look at the budget at the end of the year, it might say there's £2,490 left, but we've definitely had the money worth that we've put in, if that makes any sense. So any money that we've transferred to Entrust for the engaged projects and so on, those have gone ahead. So I know that the money has been spent. Whether they actually claim it or not is up to Entrust. So I've tried to work it all out, and I'm gathering we've got £490 left.
Which is better than £490 short. Yeah. It's always a problem trying to spend every penny and not no more. And if we do have a little surplus, there may be a question as to whether we can use it in grants to schools in the way that we did last year. £200 grants to schools that applied for particular needs or because they were undergoing particular problems. Yeah.
Yes, there is one school that I do know has had Ofsted, and RE has been flagged up as an area for development. But I've had a couple of phone calls with that school. I've visited the school, been talking to the governors. And so, you know, if you want me to, I could give them a £200 grant to help with resources. But that's up to you.
We have the money.
We have the money.
Would that be agreeable?
It's schools over near Marchington Way.
Right.
There's 2 schools in a federation there called the Woodlands Federation.
Yeah, Marchington Woodlands.
Yeah, and they have been pulled up short because of the RE aspect. I think that report is now public anyway. So.
Draycott in the Moors.
Yeah.
No, not Draycott in the Moors, Draycott in the...
Yeah, it's Marchington First School, Talbot First School, Woodlands Federation. So.
Yeah.
Michael.
Judy.
I wonder if Mary can just say a little bit more about what were Ofsted criticising resources, time allocation. You know, we might offer them £200 and it isn't the resources that they need it for, they need it for something else.
They need training.
Right.
They confused, and please don't take this, Vicky, the wrong way, okay. They've confused understanding Christianity with the agreed syllabus. Ofsted asked them what they were, you know, what were they teaching? They said, we're teaching the agreed syllabus called Understanding Christianity. And then Ofsted said that is not actually the agreed syllabus. And they said, yes, it is. And so you could imagine what happened. So you're right, actually, Judy. I think what they need is support. They need they need leadership support. So if we
it sounds
training.
Very much like training.
So if we provided them with £200,
yes,
that would enable them to access 2 network meetings, because that would pay for 2 network meetings, and they could come to the central network.
I think that comes first, and then they will understand what improved resources are needed.
Yeah.
If you just give it to them for resources, it could be misspent.
Okay. So how do you want me to proceed with this then?
I think it would be possible to offer this money with strings attached.
Okay, yeah. Because in order to get it through by the end of the financial year, I have to send an email in the next few weeks, because the wheels of Staffordshire County Council budgets, it rolls quite slowly, and it will take a while for it to actually get into the budget. So if I put that with the caveat that it's spent on training, and we would like a report on the impact. Is that fair?
You can be even more directive than that if you want to be, Mary, I think. Okay. But is that all right, Judy? Yes, I think that's very sensible. On to item 9, the development plan. And Mary has given us a development plan with a RAG rating. I thought for a moment A+ meant A+. but it's actually amber, isn't it? But I'm not quite sure what the plus is.
Okay, last time I was asked if I could put arrows and showing how we had actually improved. So we've got A for amber, as you're right, G for green and red. And where we are amber plus, it means we're not quite green yet, if that makes any sense.
We're moving in the direction of
But we're
green.
moving in the right direction. So where you see pluses, you know we're moving in the right direction. Yeah. If you see any minuses, then we're not. But we haven't got any minuses.
We've got 2 reds.
We've got 2 reds.
At the end, but that's because that's work still to be done.
Yes, because we haven't got a draft and we haven't got a launch of the agreed syllabus.
Do you want to work through these very quickly, one by one, or is it fairly straightforward?
What would members like us to do?
Plan,
it's clear? You've read it.
okay.
Any questions? No?
All right. Well, thank you, Mary, for that. It'll keep us on our toes a little bit, won't we? Won't it? We come to agenda item 10. This is an obligatory item on the agenda, and it relates to collective worship, and it enables SACRE to consider any applications it may have received from schools via governors or parents, I think, asking for a variation in practice for the regulations that cover collective worship. In particular, variations from the practice that collective worship should be mainly or broadly of a Christian character over a period of a school year. If we do receive an application, we have to consider it. But I'm able to report we haven't received a request, and there's no evidence at the moment that we're likely to receive a request.
Michael?
Yes.
I had a phone call from a parent asking if a school did this, X, Y, and Z, was that a variation of practice? So I had to explain to them that it wasn't. We had a school that's, instead of doing a weekly RE lesson, is banking each of those hours and each half term doing focus day of 6 hours on religious education and not collective worship, actually, just religious education. So the parent rung me up to ask me, was that a variation of practice? And I had to indicate it's not actually good practice because it's better to have weekly RE lessons, in my opinion, but actually within statutory requirements, it actually was fine.
This variation of practice is specifically for collective worship. For the most part, schools get on with their work and they deliver collective worship in a variety of ways, appropriately. We do have dates for the next meetings given to us by Mandy on the inside of the agenda page. We've got 2 further meetings this year and 3 meetings set out for 2023. My goodness, 2023. Seems a long way ahead somehow. But just as a matter of curiosity, it is, indeed. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Judy. Yes, it is helpful. I was just going to offer the totally useless comment that today is the second of the second month of the 22nd year. But for those who are numerical, that is quite curious.
Chair, do we need to make a date for an agreed syllabus conference prior to the 29th of June?
I think we do, and I would suggest at the beginning of next term, the beginning of the summer term. What do you think?
I'm happy for that.
I think trying to do it before the Easter break might be too difficult. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, we can have meetings of the working group and soundings meetings and so on. They're ongoing.
So Easter holidays.
Yeah.
We're back in school on the 25th of April. So would you like, I suppose we've got to ask the clerk how we go about
We need
a
to
venue.
check availability
Yes.
for the venue and webcasting and that sort of thing. But
Yes.
if you want to suggest some dates now, I can
Would it be
check and then
possible?
confirm.
Would it be possible to meet outside the county council buildings and structures and timetables? In a school, for instance, or something like that?
We can, but it has to be a public meeting. So the public have to be able to attend.
Okay.
The webcast is an extra bonus, really, but it does have to be a public meeting, so the public would have to go into the school, or it has to be available.
Do we want this to be a formal meeting of the Agreed Syllabus Conference or a working party meeting?
I'm easygoing either way. It's if we agree things at the working party, if say it was a working party meeting, then the next time we would actually present to you the formal text of the final, well, of a draft, because that's June.
Where would we meet away from the council chamber?
We could ask in trust if they had a room.
We could.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There might be a small cost, but by then we're into the new financial year anyway, so. If it was a working party, it wouldn't need to be a...
Mary, Entrust haven't yet opened their rooms,
No.
but we've got I'm in a meeting with them tomorrow and other colleagues where we're hoping to pursue this a little bit more actively.
So we are thinking May onwards. Do you think we'd be open by then?
Yes, I mean, I'm looking at my diary, which is a sort of school-based diary. I think Michael's been alluding to the fact that this time of day is not brilliant for those who are school-based members. For them, Teams meetings have been so much more suitable because they can log in immediately after they've finished their work in the classroom.
Well, let's make a suggestion. I'm looking at Wednesday the 27th of April. Would it be possible to try for a twilight meeting?
The interest is already booked for 50 clerks training with me that night for training.
22nd of April is still within the Easter holidays.
27th.
27th, sorry.
But we don't have to meet on a Wednesday. How's the Thursday the 28th?
That would be no good for me, but don't let me...
Okay.
Nor for me. Not if you're doing it
I don't think Friday would be popular.
No.
What about week beginning May the 9th?
I was looking at the week beginning May the 2nd and looking at Wednesday the 4th.
Election.
Sorry.
Elections.
Ah, yes.
So that's why I thought May the 9th, got all that out the way.
May the 9th, did
Yeah.
you say? The week beginning May the 9th, okay. Do we want to try and keep Wednesday,
Yeah.
twilight meeting on the 11th?
I think Wednesday afternoon, the 11th, would be fine.
Afternoon or twilight?
Whichever.
I
Okay.
can't make a twilight, but go ahead without me.
Are we talking working party
We're
or
talking working party.
working party? Working party, so we don't need web. So you want me to approach interest?
Yes, please.
And what time would you like that?
Well, we'll say 2 o'clock, I don't know. You said
What
after-
about teachers? Do you want teachers there?
If possible, and I mean, or possibly we could say meet at 3 and perhaps have a two-part meeting and
Yep.
teachers join later, perhaps,
Okay.
or something like that.
Yeah. So we could say 3 p.m. to 5 and the teachers join as they can. Okay. Wednesday the 11th.
Yeah. And by that time, we will have begun to consolidate the proposed text, I think.
I'll try and do a mock draft, mock-up if you like, with some wording in, and we can say take that out, put that in, just to get, because I think working from an empty page is no good. I think we need words on pages.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Can I ask you, can you send it, because I won't be able to do it at that time. I've got a governance meeting, I'm racing back home to a governance meeting now, so could you send it out so people who can't make it can make comments on it?
I don't think we'll be able to find a time that suits everybody, really, but I'm sorry about that. I mean, it might be that Mary will be able to let you see some of the draft text, and you might be able to comment on it.
Yeah, I'll send it out to everybody, draft text, and then comments will be welcomed.
Well, we've reached the end of our agenda. There's one comment that I do wish to share concerning British values, which is that British values, the teaching about British values, is supposed to be embedded in the whole curriculum. It's not the responsibility of RE alone to deliver. It's a part of the whole school curriculum. And although we should take note of this, it's not our prime responsibility to achieve that. Thank you all very much. You've got a slightly longer afternoon than you might have thought. But thank you for your attendance and active participation, and the work goes on. Thank you.